Hello.
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 Oh, hello, Barney.
Hello.
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 Bonjour.
Hi.
How you doing there? Yellow.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Yo.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Hello, everybody. I'm Mark Mandel from Wow Moments, and I'm thrilled to hang out with you here for the next little while. Well, we have a chance to talk about business-to-business customer experience, and our show is called Customer Experience Tales from the Trenches. In fact, this is the 10th episode this year of CX Tales from the Trenches, and so we've had a pretty good run of things so far. And of all the shows that I get the privilege of putting out on the internet, all about customer experience work that we all do and love, this is by far and away my favorite show. I love the opportunity to have really frank conversations with CX leaders, practitioners, vendors, and subject matter experts to really dig in a really unbridled and unfiltered way about what's really going on in the world of customer experience. And that's why we're here today, to have that exact kind of frank and open and honest conversation. Before we get into the heart of the show, though, and I know you're here for that, I thought I would just reflect back on the little video clip that I showed at the onset of the show. And I don't know if you remember seeing it just a couple of moments ago, but it was those people all saying, hello, 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 hello. And I don't know if you know what that's from. And it's from a TV ad that was actually one of my most favorite television ads I remember seeing in a long time. And if you know what it is, I'm going to ask you to get into the chat, either the LinkedIn chat or the YouTube chat, or even the native chat here, and just comment about it. And the first person who knows what that hello video is from gets a copy of this great book. This is called the Customer Experience Management book by Sandy Mathis. It's a book I've read more than once. It's well worth getting a copy, and I'm more than happy to share a copy with the very first person who says what that hello video was from. If you don't know, don't cheat, don't look it up, don't chat GPT it, don't Google it. Either you know it or you don't. And if you do, I welcome to see it on the list. And if you're first on the list who mentions it, you're in, you get a copy of Sandy's book. You know, I'm going to talk for just a moment about this show, the Customer Experience Tales from the Trenches show. As I said, it's a favorite of mine. I do a number of different programs, but this is amongst my favorite. And I've had a good fortune and good luck of having a bunch of really amazing guests on during 2025. If you go back either on YouTube or LinkedIn, you'll find a bunch of them there. But I'll think back just, for example, on one, which I thought was so much fun to put together. With all the rise of AI now in the world of customer experience, I'm very candid about this. There's some debate, we'll call it debate, some argument around whether or not we even need surveying anymore, or can you just use AI to, in effect, predict how your customers feel? And I'm not sure we're quite ready to do that yet, but I brought two folks onto that show, and this was a few months ago. I brought a gentleman whose full-time job it is at one of the large Blue Cross and Blue Shield health insurance companies to run all their survey program, and he's just like a Qualtrics maven in his case. And he's cranking out surveys all day long, and that's his vocation. And I brought a gentleman on who works for a platform company called OCX Cognition. And in fact, it was Richard Owen, the owner of that company. And his position is you don't need surveys anymore. So I have the guy who says you don't need surveys anymore, and the guy whose job it is to make surveys all day long, and I let them kind of debate it out for an hour. And I think it ended in a tie. But I could tell you that there was no conversation that I've had up to this point more fun than watching those two guys kind of go at it and try to figure out who's right, who's wrong about whether or not surveys play a role. Again, I think they do. I really do think that they do still. So think about that, and here, let's get into this show. Now, I'm going to talk for just a moment about something very personal to me. I try to talk about a company every show that inspires me, that I think is doing some interesting work in customer experience work. And honestly, one of the companies that I want to talk about, in fact, the company I want to talk about in that context today happens to be very close to me. That company is a business that I co-founded earlier this year. It's called AuctionWire. And what AuctionWire is about, think about if you happen to be, of all things, like I am, a baseball card collector. And you buy these baseball cards at these auctions and online places like eBay. We built an AI system to take a lot of the friction out of that buyer customer journey about buying and sourcing these cards. And so I talk about AuctionWire with other people. I talk about that this is really a customer experience play, because there's nothing that I've built in my AuctionWire software that could not be done without the software. But what I sat down and said, let's take a look at the journey that somebody goes on to buy a sports card, especially a more expensive sports card. And let's find those friction spots in that journey and work through making them better. And by bringing some AI into the mixture and some other things, AuctionWire has been entirely designed to make just a better customer experience. It's really a customer experience solution to a non-customer experience problem. And I'm thrilled to talk about that business has actually finally gone live. So if you want to check out what I'm doing as my side hustle, check out auctionwire.ai. I think you'll think it's pretty cool. Now, let's change gears for a minute. I always want to talk about some kind of conference or event that's coming up or just having happened in this particular format. And this one's not a good announcement. This is kind of a bad announcement I want to talk about. And that bad announcement is what I perceive to be the demise of the Customer Experience Professionals Association, or the CXPA local network program. And if you don't know what that is, if you're anywhere in the world, you may have heard of the CXPA. Again, it's the large global organization of customer experience folks like myself and maybe yourself. And what the CXPA had done for the last almost 15 years is they chartered local groups in local markets. Here in North Carolina, they had a group. In Boston, they had a group. In Los Angeles, in Texas, everywhere around the United States and elsewhere, they had groups that would get together, often face-to-face, and talk about customer experience things and learn from one another and just sort of network together. And then COVID came along over the 4 or 5 years of that whole thing, and it kind of disbanded the local element because we couldn't really get together that easily. We started reverting to Zoom calls and things like that. But we're a couple of years out of the pandemic now, and it never got back together. So the association made an announcement to those of us that organize these groups. I'm the local North Carolina local group leader, that we're going to shut down these meetups going forward. And starting January of 2026, so in a few weeks, there'll be no more official local network events within the CXPA. And I'm disappointed about that. I'm really kind of bummed out about that. I'm going to miss it. I've been very hands-on in that group for close to 15 years now. And I'm going to really think that that's a missing element in it. I don't know how you feel about it. If you're familiar with the CXPA and the local networking element of it, and you're going to be missing it too, maybe we could figure out a way to meet up together some way, somehow, just without the CXPA in the mixture. Hopefully, maybe we could do that. Think about that. And if you want to comment about that, please do feel free. I also like recognizing people in the business. Sometimes it's a vendor I want to recognize. Sometimes it's an end practitioner I want to recognize. And I have two folks that I really want to talk about for just a moment while we're together today. One gentleman is a vendor. He works at a company that you may know of, and another one is a client-side company guy. I want to talk about both for just a moment. I want to give an award I call my Customer Experience Changemaker Award. And what this really means is people who have been willing to stick their necks out and make a difference. People who are willing to innovate. People are willing to break the rules. People are willing to be a little bit on the edge of convention in the favor of doing right by the customers, or really pushing limits of technology very favorably. And so there's two guys I want to talk about while we're together today here. The first gentleman, some of you who are listening to this episode may have met on an earlier episode of mine of this show. His name is Ibi Syed. And Ibi Syed runs a company called Cotera. They're one of the AI platforms that came out of nowhere a couple of years ago, and they've been on a tear. They've been able to take agentic AI and workflows and build amazing things like you've never seen. I've never seen before. And I'm such a big fan of the business, and I'm watching their trajectory. They've gone from startup to kind of early stage company to like this rocket ship now going to the moon. And I'm so proud of that relationship with Ibi and his team, and so pleased to see that growth. So I want to first recognize Ibi Syed and Cotera in that type of work, because it's just awesome. And again, check out Cotera on the website if you really want to see some good stuff. The other gentleman I want to recognize is a dear friend of mine also. His name is Nick Werner. And Nick works as a CX leader at a company called Mitra Tech. And I don't know if you know Nick or Mitra Tech, but they are a byproduct of interesting private equity roll-up where they've been their company. He was with another company that got bought and rolled into another company, which got bought and rolled into still a larger company. But throughout all these changes in the kind of the dynamic of Nick's workplace with all these acquisitions, Nick remained in charge of customer experience over there, and he's just doing amazing work. The customers love them, and I see that as a direct reflection on the work that Nick and his team are doing. So, major shout out to Nick over at Mitra Tech. Check them out, and if you really want to understand what Nick's up to, I'm sure he'd welcome an opportunity for you to reach out to him, as I'm sure Ibi would as well. I really want to now shift gears and talk about this show, this episode, why we're here. And to do so, I have the privilege of having two amazing folks sitting in the backstage area right now who are going to join us in just a moment. First, I'm going to bring out a gentleman who I've gotten to know over the last roughly 6 months. His name is Adam Clay, and Adam is the Chief Revenue Officer of a company you probably have heard of called CustomerGauge. You may remember I've done a show also that I happen to call CX Changemakers a couple of months ago, where I brought a gentleman also named Adam, but Adam Doral, also from CustomerGauge on that call. And now I'm bringing Adam Clay here because we're going to really have a good, fun conversation. And he's volunteered to be my co-host on this show. So I'd like to do with no further delay, I'd like to bring Adam out and have him introduce himself to you. Hey, Adam.
Hey, Mark. Good afternoon.
Hey, I love these types of conversations that always start off in the most awkward way possible, and then they kind of get smoother over time. So thank you for really hanging out here and being on part of this conversation and to be my co-host for today's show. Adam, before we get into the heart of it, it dawns on me that I know you've known me for a little while, and I certainly know CustomerGauge, but people who are listening in might not know you, might not know CustomerGauge. Can you just take a moment and just kind of talk about, why are we together? Who's CustomerGauge, and who are you there to help us really understand the importance of you being here?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And Mark, thank you for having me. It's just such a pleasure to be here. So a quick description of what CustomerGauge does. So it's fairly straightforward. We help B2B companies, and I think that's key. We work with companies that sell to other companies. We help B2B companies take customer feedback sourced principally through surveys and turn that into revenue growth, which is different, and I think we're going to talk a little bit about this today, than surveying customers and getting feedback for the purpose of research. Both noble activities, but at our company, we bias toward taking feedback and turning it into revenue growth. And so unlike traditional feedback tools that will often take insights and either silo them into a research bucket or just leave it unutilized, what we do is provide a real-time feedback system that identifies things like at-risk customers, untapped upsell opportunities, and ultimately provides an organizational-wide way of driving the type of accountability often required in companies of all sizes to become truly customer-centric. And because we have this fierce commitment to acting on feedback, we feel that we take control of often difficult situations and put it into the hands of people, call it account managers, for example, account owners, support staff, and we empower them to act quickly on that feedback to reduce churn, to grow key accounts, and to just try to maximize the value of every customer relationship. And, Mark, unlike B2C feedback programs, which can take a small, statistically significant sample of feedback from a global customer base and extrapolate it with confidence to all customers in a consumer orientation, with B2B relationships, each relationship is unique. Each relationship has its own dynamics. And so we really do, as crazy as it might sound, strive to help our customers hear from 100% of their B2B customers. And those are some of the ways that we have been told, at least by the companies that we work with, about 1,000 of them around the world, that we distinguish ourselves in the marketplace. How did that sound?
That sounds really important. And I think of other, we'll call them companies with a competitive interest to CustomerGauge. And I don't think they come close to doing what you're talking about. And there's so many gaps between what CustomerGauge is about and almost any other feedback platform that comes to my mind. Because I think, I don't want to over paraphrase for you, but in my words, you guys have this concept that the thing we're measuring is not just the respondent the way other companies do, but you have this concept of an account.
That's right.
And this account is like an affiliation of people who work together who may each have a point of view from their own unique lens. But the idea, you want to understand or assess the health of not just each personal relationship, but the health of the account as well. And I've never seen that done, honestly, outside of your business. I know people who have tried, whether it be through other tools like Qualtrics or Medallia or one of those other systems, to kind of fake their way into it by doing funny math on the dashboards or whatever to make it kind of connect the dots a little bit. But you guys are built for that, right? That's why your business exists, is to understand that B2B relationship versus trying to backfill a B2C one. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think it's more than fair. And hey, far be it from me, particularly with the sophisticated audience that you attract with your show, to stand here and say, well, hey, here are the things that we think make us unique and different. I think certainly when we hear from people who have been doing it a long time, like you have, Mark, like, hey, here's something that really stands out. And when we start to hear it over and over again from our customers and those organizations evaluating whether or not CustomerGauge might make sense for them, that jumps to the forefront immediately. And it sounds like such a simple thing that rather than put the individual survey recipient at the center of your feedback universe, which is a perfectly reasonable thing to do in a B2C setting, it doesn't always cut it, particularly for companies that have a complex sale. And most of the companies that we serve have a complex sale, which is to say that they have on average between 8 or 9 people that they're going to sell to and service over the life of their relationship. And seeing those individual survey recipients in something as straightforward as an organizational chart to understand not just how we're serving individuals, but how I, as a user of CustomerGauge, am actually serving C-level executive VPs, directors, and all the way down to the end user of my product or service. We have things like that, and that we show people who are coming from traditional research tools, and it's kind of like mind-blowing. And then, of course, the
light bulb goes like ding, they get it.
Yeah, it's such a simple thing, but like many powerful things, it's often the simplicity of them that makes them valuable. So I appreciate you putting your finger on that, because we kind of get that feedback every day.
I'm sure you live it. We're lucky here today that not only is it you and I together here, but we have a special guest who's sitting on backstage waiting to pop out here and join us. And I'd love to bring her out in a second. But friends, let me tell you who it is. I'll kind of give you a spoiler alert, then we'll bring her out. I first met Rachel Terlau, it's got to be 15 years ago. She was working at a client-side company that sold. They were a distributor of computers and computer parts and computer software, and she took on owning their Voice of the Customer program. We met then. I was working for the company that was their vendor at the time. And then she went to the dark side. She went to the vendor side of Voice of the Customer when she took a fabulous job for a long time at Medallia. And then recently left Medallia and was drafted by a company called OneStream Software to come in and be the global leader of customer experience over there. Her name was Rachel Terlau, and she's a dear friend. I'd love to bring her out and have her get a chance to say hello to all of you guys. And look, there she is. There's Rachel.
Hello.
Hey, thanks for hanging out here with Adam and me. Rachel, I was trying to do my best a moment ago to explain who Rachel is, and I'm sure I did at best a half-assed job of that. So could you do me a favor and just get a chance to take 2 minutes of explain your story and kind of because being a global leader of CX means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. I've never seen a more twisted around word of customer experience in my life as I see lately, just generally out there. And I'd love to know kind of where your lane is, how you see your lane in the world of CX, so we know kind of where you sit.
Sure, I'd be happy to. First of all, thanks so much for having me, Mark. Great to see you again, Adam. Super happy to be with the two of you. So I guess just when I think back on how I initially, whether you call it fell into customer experience or really kind of the kickoff point to my CX career, I had really no idea what I was getting into. And in fact, the term itself, customer experience, wasn't even something that was spoken to with certainly the level of frequency that it is today. I have been on the vendor side, to your earlier mention. I've been on the client side, once again, as I am now with OneStream. And I've also been in the consulting space. Right. So when I think about my lane today, it really is based on, I would say, the accumulation of all of the different lanes that I have otherwise operated in over these past many years.
So like an interstate freeway with lots of lanes?
Lots of lanes. Lots of lanes, absolutely. And some of them, are going pretty fast. Some of them maybe a little bit slower. But when I think about really my lane today, it is to drive positive transformation and growth. It really is. It is so much less about surveys and scores, although like yourself, Mark, to what you mentioned earlier, I still believe that customer feedback, customer sentiment is really important for a lot of different reasons.
Yep.
But it's so much more than that, right? It's even more than the analytical aspect of it, collecting all of the data, pulling it together, again, tracking your scores, trying to identify where are the gaps, where are the improvement opportunities, all of that. It really is about driving change. We need to inform the organization, frontline teams, and leaders in a very timely manner as to what needs to be addressed for which customer, why, when, and then enable the teams and the organization broadly to take the right action. And through that process, when we think about kind of as an operating engine, if you will, through that process, that's where we're able to see the tangible impact from prioritizing customer experience efforts.
Interesting. That's a heck of a lane.
It's a big lane. It's a big lane.
Sounds like it. Hey, I wanted to get all of us thinking about something, and maybe we'll kick off a great conversation with this. It's not meant to be a question as much as it's meant to be an observation. And I don't know how you guys feel, either of you feel about this, but I used to, when we get this, we're for those of you who might be playing this back on a recording, we're sitting here now in the midst of the 2025 holiday season. New Year's is a week and a half away, or 2 weeks away. God help us, 2 weeks away. And some people like to make resolutions around this time of year. What's going to make the new year a better year, a different year, and maybe put some parts of their life behind them from the going out year. And I want to try to apply that for just a moment amongst the three of us. I know I have some thoughts about what we think jointly or collectively this new year, 2026, is going to bring in the world of kind of B2B CX. There's new thinking, new ideas, because I keep, let's just call it what it is. I know a lot of folks this year who struggled this year. They struggled professionally. They struggled to show results. They struggled for a variety of reasons in a CX profession. And I think that old, was it an Albert Einstein quote about doing the same thing over and over again, the same way, but hoping for a different outcome? I don't think we could do the same things we've done all along and hope for a different outcome. So I'm wondering if the goal is to make 2026 a banner, much more impactful year for ourselves, for our company, for our customers. What do you think about newness and starting over and new ideas and new beginnings in B2B CX? What do you guys see? What do you hear? What do you see? What do you think? If anything, I'm just curious what your thoughts are about new beginnings for the new year.
Rachel, would you like to lead off and I'll follow?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I think that's a really great question, Mark. To one of your points, what has worked in past is probably not going to consistently work as we head forward, right? So what does that mean in terms of a new change or a new way of doing things? I think it's really critical to some of my earlier points that I just mentioned. I think it's really critical that we start pushing beyond, again, the surveys, the data, the metrics, the scores. And again, don't get me wrong, all of that has value in and of itself, but really put our eyes on the prize, which is, again, organizational transformation. To me, this really comes down to a mindset shift, a new orientation. And then the consideration for us as CX leaders is, how do we consistently align across leadership to make sure that mindset and that orientation is not just fostered but cultured, and we sustain it in some very tangible way. I always speak to active, visible leadership. I want my leaders to talk about customer experience loudly and boldly, but not just what I oftentimes, okay, guys, whoever is watching this, don't get mad at me. Not the bobblehead. I don't want this, right? Remember those bobblehead toy things that would sit on the dash of the car, and it just goes, yeah. Okay, no,
Well,
I don't.
I had the
I don't
hula
want
girl.
that.
I had the hula girl on my dashboard.
Okay, so one way or the other, right? No, I don't just say yes. Don't just nod your head. Don't just put out fancy talk or marketing talk. I want leaders to live it, breathe it, and help us demonstrate the importance of this and the value of this. And at the end of the day, if we can all do that, we will demonstrate the impact and the value, right? Because we're going to see revenues grow up. We're going to see profits increase. We're going to see that customers are sharing positive word of mouth, and they're doing so willingly. We're not having to ask them to do it. They're doing that on our behalf. They're advocating for the brand because of the amazing experience that they had. And to me, that's what I would like to see happening in 26. Let's just really dig in and make this the priority that it needs to be, so that we can, again, demonstrate positive growth for companies, for our employees, for our customers.
Adam, what do you think?
Well, I just want to say, Rachel, that was really well said. And I'll just, I think, build on what you mentioned, because I couldn't agree with everything more wholeheartedly. I consider myself so lucky, and I'm very grateful that I get to experience what's on the mind of lots of companies around the world, because I get to work with our customers every day, some of whom are doing really remarkable things in the areas of applying feedback to drive growth and revenue, just like Rachel said. And then for the other half of my job, I get to talk to companies that haven't quite figured it out yet. And they're coming from either the position of, we haven't done anything, or they're coming from the position of, we tried something else, another technology, another service, and it's just not working for us. And so I'll just zero in on that population, because I think it's very interesting. If I think about all of the conversations, and there have been hundreds of them over the last 12 months that I've had with companies that are looking for something more than they currently have, there is a remarkable drive, and our phone rings every day, to become closer to their customers. Mm-hmm. You would think that in such a technologically enabled age that there wouldn't be any companies left that desire to be closer to their customer. And it's remarkable, because I think there is actually some distancing that technology in general has created between company and customer. And I'll tell you why I think that is, because we get every day companies with board level mandates and CEO level mandates, to say nothing of CX professionals who are frustrated with the limitations of their current solution, who are just like, we need to be closer to our customers. We just don't know what is on their mind, and therefore how we can improve and where we might be at risk. And so I think, despite these major technological upheavals that we're experiencing at like a societal level that are all intended to do good, nothing has really stepped to the front to automate fully like the old-fashioned relationship that a company has to have with its customer. Does that make sense? And here we are, the three of us, and we are talking about surveying customers, which is it's one of the oldest things in the book, right? But that as a discipline, specifically in the dimensions that Rachel mentioned, that has not been perfected, largely because it seems to me that a lot of companies don't act on the feedback to drive outcomes. And that's like the enabling behavior. And guess what? It's hard in a B2B relationship. You can't automate action. If Rachel is a customer and she tells me in a survey that she's unhappy with some element of the relationship, I will destroy that relationship if my next response to Rachel in a B2B relationship is an automated response.
So you can't have your bot call my bot?
Act. Yeah, that's well, maybe someday that'll be acceptable. Call me when that happens. And so what's interesting is there's this real drive from very, very senior levels in organizations just to have companies get closer to their customers. And I think it's got something to do with the relationship that companies have formed with all of this automation over the last few years. I don't think it's actually made the underlying relationship better. That's what I would contend. Mark, is that fair?
Interesting, both of you. I have complete confidence in everything you both said is right. I'm going to just add another layer to it. When I look at my next year picture, I think we need to, this, and I believe what I'm going to say is a necessary outcome. It's not just a hope. We need to do a better job as a profession of linking our efforts to financial impact. I think if we can't speak in financial terms and operational terms about the health of our customer relationships and the impact that our work is having on those things, we're not getting funded next year.
Yeah, you're right.
I think, the money is going to go away. And I think historically we've all known that day is that day of reckoning is coming, but it's here. I don't know too many financial people at companies that are willing to hear the story of, well, I got us 8 NPS points this year.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, they want to know, well, turn that into a money conversation. I'll come talk to you. Until then, don't talk to me.
Yes.
And it's just interesting. So I think, for me, next year is about the linkage to money and how do we articulate the benefits of customer experience transformation, improvement, measurement, analytics, and all the things that come with. How do we articulate those in terms of customer lifetime value, order value, reorder value, order frequency, deal close timelines, much more so than net promoter score or CSAT points. I think if we don't do that, I think we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot, honestly, in my opinion.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more, Mark. I think you're absolutely spot on with that. So it also then means that we as customer experience professionals and leaders likely need to adopt a new language set, right? When we think about how we speak to all of this and maybe to a certain extent expand our skill set as well, right? Because I mean, yes, earlier you said that I had a big lane when I was describing, I guess, what I do, right? But what you just described, that's a really big lane, right? When we're literally intending on hitting every single aspect of the organization or the enterprise in terms of demonstrating operational efficiencies or benefits that otherwise, again, demonstrate revenue growth, right? It has to attach to money. It has to be monetized. Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more.
Adam, do you have anything to add?
I do, and I really have to resist the temptation to show up on the podcast, Rachel and Mark, and just be a shill for my company. I don't just want to shamelessly promote us, but and so what I'm about to share has nothing to do with me. But I have the really good fortune of working for 2 visionary co-founders who started thinking, Mark and Rachel, about this exact dilemma in customer experience like 2 decades ago. And so how do you make sure to use parlance that I recently heard from them, that the feedback that you gather from your customers doesn't wind up in the survey landfill?
Yep.
Waste. And so I already talked about, what we hear from the market in terms of the importance of acting on it. There's this other simple thing that our customers do, and this is very much the vision of our founders. And I think it's sort of profound, and I'm surprised because there are thousands of companies out there that provide feedback platforms in this day and age, but there's only 1, maybe 2 companies that will take NPS and feedback and put it side by side with revenue. And I just happen to be super grateful to work for one, because when we show the companies that are thinking about doing something differently, that population of companies I mentioned before that just feel they have to get closer to their customers, the contextualizing power, the clarity that comes from saying, not just that I have this number of accounts that are full of detractors, but what these accounts are actually worth. And then say the driver of that negative sentiment is X, and that X is putting this amount of revenue at risk. That little simple relationship, which it turns out is actually pretty hard to do, that's illuminating. But so we tend to gravitate toward wanting to work with people like the 2 of you who kind of understand that we're here to drive revenue outcomes.
Yep.
I am a little concerned in the industry that there are still enormous populations of people who are gathering lots of feedback, who are extrapolating research insights intended to move the business forward, but they're not heard because they're just not contextualized, Mark and Rachel, in the way that you just described, side by side with revenue or other operational improvements.
Adam, you can't be more right by what you're saying. It makes me think of this crazy short story I wanted to share here. I don't know if I've ever talked about this one before. I used to have a client in the Midwest of the United States that is a large wholesaler and manufacturer of home furniture. And I remember first visiting this gentleman there who was the head of customer excellence was his title. And I remember asking him about kind of the state of the state in his company and what they're doing today and how they listen to the customers and what they do about the data and whatever. And he said, come with me. He walked me into this room they had a big building. They walked me into a room in their building. And the room was, I vividly remember, the walls were covered with bookshelves like a library. And those library shelves were each full of big, wide, loose leaf binder books. And the spines on each book had a date range, like date X to date Y, written down the side of the book. And each book must have, if you took any book and opened it up, there were like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of PowerPoint slides inside that book.
Really?
And literally, they must have had 250 books in that room going back 20 some odd years of business. And I said, what is this? And he said, well, that's our customer feedback. And I said,
Oh my.
Come on.
how do you action this if it's in these books? Does anybody actually even look at these books? He goes, not often. I said, why do you have them? He goes, in case somebody needs some data, the book is here. And it was like the dates of whatever the feedback was related to. And I said, how much do you pay for this? And they were buying these books from an outside consulting firm. I said, how much do the books cost? He said, on average, these books are $500,000 a book. So it's like, it was like $100 million worth of books in that room. And I said, literally like take a book and like dust it off because it was dusty.
I bet.
Right? Because nobody looked at it. They didn't action it, but they were basically paying lip service to, hey, we listen. And we make a bunch of charts and we put the charts in the book. And then we hope nobody comes looking for the book.
So that's such a vivid, by the way, can I steal that story and claim it as my own? Because it's such a vivid, that's such a vivid anecdote. I'm sure we've all done this, whether it's buying a Christmas gift or, buying a good or a service for the company that we work for. But I can punch in a search into Google now with Gemini or just go to ChatGPT and ask for alternatives to something I'm thinking about buying or a good or service that I currently have. And so the barriers to exit in a relationship are so low now because the quality of research that we as consumers or we as buyers of B2B goods and services can have at our fingertips. It's remarkable. And a company who doesn't treat feedback with the sense of urgency that we're talking about here, and puts it on the proverbial shelf or just dumps it into the survey landfill. And our contention is when you get feedback from a B2B customer, you have like 24 hours to act upon it or trust and loyalty starts to erode. That's one of our sort of, capstone findings over 2 decades of doing this. You're doing business at your peril because you're one ChatGPT prompt away from your customer finding a perfectly suitable alternative to your good and your service. And that hasn't always been the case, Mark. So just building on your point on the utility of feedback on the premise that you act upon it.
Yep, totally. I mean, if you're not acting on it, I would dare go out on a limb and say, lacking action this day and age, while it's valuable research from a high impact perspective, you're probably wasting your money. This is about driving operational action.
Rachel, what do you think about that? Because you're in such an interesting position. You're actually the practitioner day to day on the call. Does that hold water?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, it really is customer experience, not just the feedback in and of itself, but as an organizational discipline, really needs to be a part of the ongoing operating rhythm of the company. So what does that mean? It's all of the things, right? But if we're not actually inspiring and or driving the right types of actions that are going to move the needle, then it is kind of almost all for naught, right? Because the kind of work that we do, I know to maybe those who have not otherwise been exposed to all of the different activities or work streams that we might take on, maybe customer experience sounds a little fluffy,
Yeah,
right?
fair. Fair.
But we know it is hard work. It is particularly hard when you execute it on the right things in the right way, right? Because again, now we're talking about orchestrating across the entirety of the organization to drive measurable change and deliver measurable results. So it
Yeah.
absolutely has to be a core part of the organization's operating engine. It has to. CX should never be a silo, right? It should never sit off to the periphery, which I'm sure both of you in your careers have observed similarly to myself. So kind of thinking back when I was on the other side of the table, right? I would observe this with many of my clients, and they paid good money for the tools, the tech, all of the things, but CX sits on the periphery, or it gets tucked in under a part of the organization lacking the proper visibility, advocacy, etc. So it absolutely has to become a way of operating. It really does.
It's part of the culture.
Has to be. Yeah.
But they say, right? Tell me if I'm wrong. Culture starts at the top. So, how do we get leaders to care, especially in companies who are making their numbers?
Oh, yeah. That's a hard one, right? Because I've also observed too, in I guess throughout all of my years of work, companies that are doing well, even if they're currently measuring feedbacks or sentiment and their scores aren't that great, as long as they're hitting the mark, right? Or they're delivering on numbers or on targets or on goals or exceeding them, obviously we're doing all the right things, right? It is really difficult. So to your question, Mark, how do we get leaders to care? It means, again, we have to adopt a new way of speaking, a new language, a new taxonomy when we engage leadership to get them to listen, get them to care, get them to listen in the right way. Because again, if we go in there and say, "Hey, boss, look, NPS went up a point," they're going to say, "And?" Especially
Yeah.
if again the otherwise the organization is performing as expected, right? We've got to use the right language, and sometimes that's really hard with different personality types, right? That's the other thing too. So,
So
hey,
I'm itching to challenge you on something about that, just to think
sure.
about it for a minute. If I were a sales guy working hypothetically at your company, and I walk into the office and I find the CEO, and remember, I'm playing the role of sales guy now, and I say, "Hey, boss, good news. We're locking in a $10 million contract for a new customer. They're going to take me to lunch. They're going to treat me like royalty for telling them that. Believe me, I'm going to do it.
Yes.
My boss is going to roll out the red carpet for me every which way
Yes.
for a $10 million order." But if as a CX person, I go to find the same boss and say, I figured out a way to save $10 million for the business through customer experience improvement, I'm seen incredulously. They don't believe me, or they hope I can do it. They'd like to believe I could do it, but they have doubts. Why is there a gap between I could sign a $10 million contract, or I could take customers we already have and figure out a way to make it better for them so they stick around and they don't bail and go to the competition? Why is there this disconnect between sales guy and CX person? What do you think? I mean, just let's hypothesize this a minute. What do you think? And it's not just it's any company.
Well, I think Rachel's touched on a lot of it. If I may, I think that the customer experience function has, either by accident or in many organizations actually by design, it is so closely associated with research, and research is something that all companies have to do, right? When you think about product direction, you think about innovation, you think about long-term strategic opportunity, customer feedback as a pool of research from which valid strategic decisions can be derived, perfectly legitimate.
Yep.
But it lacks as a discipline the immediacy required to maintain an edge, I think, in what are increasingly competitive global markets. My sense is also that when you show up into a board meeting or an executive meeting and you show nothing but charts and graphs and the impact that certain things have had on the NPS score, it does lack immediacy. And there's something I think about the time that we live in and the way that people consume information through TikTok and short videos and very short pieces of information. I would love to see in the presentation of B2B customer feedback much more raw feedback and anecdote as a way of moving people along emotionally. Because remember, people make decisions that are largely emotional at first, and they justify those decisions typically with logic later, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you see from 6 or 7 of your customers that they're all struggling with the same thing, and these are big customers, and these things aren't addressed, even though I have salespeople and account managers and support people and services people deployed into those same accounts, that's a very powerful mover. But researchers are often distanced from the day-to-day operation of the company and might not even know that thing that's showing up in 6 different pieces of raw text-based feedback actually has material benefit to the business. Does that make sense? If addressed. And so there's signal there that can be packaged up, I think, in ways that are a little bit more consistent with the way that people, including executives, consume information to compel them. The NPS chart, I think it's losing utility, if I'm being honest. It's the actual insights that are going to move the revenue needle, I think, that are vastly more compelling. I don't know, Rachel, what you think about that. I sort of jumped in there.
No, I mean, I think you said that so also well. And I agree. We've got to start steering away from just, tracking or trending NPS. Singularly, what does that mean? First of all, again, okay, we went up 3 points, we went down 2. Okay, and who cares? Right? We have to attach it. We have to attach it to meaning or provide that substance as you just mentioned, Adam, right? So if we have a subset of customers that are saying the same thing over and over and over again, and then through that we can also demonstrate that we are starting to trend down on certain scores or metrics. Okay, well, now we've got the start of a very compelling story, right? Which is, hey, we've got to fix these things. Now we still haven't monetized that. We still haven't attached that yet in terms of the delivery of our story, if you will. We still haven't attached that to financial impact, whether it be positive or negative. Hey, if we fix these things, we're going to save X number of dollars and drive, I don't know, increase operational efficiency by a certain percentage. Or, hey, we'll have the ability to attract new customers based on, this new competitive differentiator or innovator. That's what they've been saying they've been wanting for years, right? It's time for us to take action. But we've got to make that triangulation. And I think that is the piece that, again, is oftentimes missing. But that is the language of the CEO. That is the language of the CFO for sure, right? And so we've got to, again, adopt a new way of thinking, behaving, and speaking around all of this.
I agree.
Good, Adam.
I was going to say just something that I experienced recently from a customer that we just started to work with. I can't go into all the detail or give the name, but they're a multinational company, and they have about 500,000 businesses that they service across their market. And so CustomerGauge gets turned on, feedback starts coming in real time, and one of their top accounts came back with feedback, and this is an account that gets visited almost every day by somebody at the company. Said, and I wish I could share the detail, but I really can't. They said, "We love your company. We've been doing business for a while, but my machine," and this is the machine that enables the sale of goods, the machine. "My machine has been broken for months." Isn't that crazy? And so,
yeah, it's fundamental.
Yeah, and so I thought it was so illustrative because taken and put into a research bucket, that feedback is going to get discovered at the next QBR or maybe at the annual meeting in like November, right? Taken and acted upon. Clearly, there is a profound opportunity to improve operational excellence and customer service that shouldn't go unattended. And if it exists for one in a company with 500,000 customers, it probably exists for thousands. And so when we come back to this notion of how you might justify a program, I'm just going to echo what Rachel said about NPS is interesting, but it's really hard to drive reinvestment in the program if you don't surface real insight. I'm arguing that some of this anecdotal insight that's collected in these programs put into the survey landfill is like gold, but it has to be acted upon. And I hope that example that I gave was illustrative, because there's something that this company never would have known about. They would know when their customer migrated to the competitor in a few months. That's when they would have found out.
When they
Right, when it's too late. It's too late to fix anything. It's too late to address anything. I think the other, what I would find interesting, just circling back around to your story, Adam, is if you think about this from, I don't know, from manufacturing type of industry, just assuming that's what this was, because you mentioned machine. But think about all of the different channels, right, that customers might engage or attempt to engage to get somebody to help them, right? If I had a broken machine of any kind, guaranteed, I'm trying to call somebody, I'm trying to get support, I'm trying to get somebody out to my business or my house or whatever to fix it. And so when you think about that, it's customers, engaging across all of these different channels, all the different time, across multiple different times. So at a higher level of frequency, especially when something goes wrong, and then it's only really surfaced through feedback, right? So it pinpoints a much bigger and deeper problem that needs to be addressed, right? And I think the other aspect of that too is what all organizations should be thinking about is how do we leverage feedback and truly the full suite of CX tools, right? When we think about the broader toolkit that we oftentimes roll out to do our work, how do we leverage that in a way to predictively get ahead or proactively get ahead of issues before they occur in the first place, right? Because again, right now, I think for the most part, voice of customer strategies and programs still, they're looking in the rear view, right? Now, of course, everybody out there, keep in mind, I've been on the vendor side too. So, I get it. Are saying no, we're forward looking, right? But if we can just be really honest and real, we're still looking in the rear view mirror. We're still looking behind us, right? Instead of figuring out what we need to focus on and address, either optimize or fix or improve or innovate for the future. And I believe, again, experience, feedback, sentiment, all of the things can help us do that if it's operationalized in the right way.
Interesting. I know we're right at the hour here, so I'm going to just ask you guys one final thing I want to just touch on. And I want a kind of a visceral, kind of rapid fire answer and not a super big one.
Okay.
Is there a company that you can think of, whether you work with them or not, just a company that comes to your mind that you think is doing it right, that you really find inspiring, the one that you really go, boy, they nailed it? Is there a nail it company out there that comes to your mind?
Rachel, after you.
Putting me on the spot.
Oh, well, if you'd like, I'm happy to go first.
Okay, please do.
If it's helpful. Okay. We give awards out at CustomerGauge every year for companies that we feel do a particularly good job, and the categories are long, but in the interest of keeping it short, Mark, Coca-Cola distributes and sells its products through about 200 bottlers worldwide, and we've been working for a little while now with one of the biggest bottlers in the world called Coca-Cola Hellenic. And this is public information because our awards are out there for the public to consume. This company has more than 1 million B2B relationships. And not only has their NPS trended up steadily over that population of people, but they close the loop with detractors, those individuals they survey who have negative feedback 100% of the time. Isn't that incredible? This is across 1 million B2B relationships. And you're talking now about thousands of frontline workers, whether they're account reps or service reps or delivery personnel, because that's the business they're in. The loop always gets closed. And I find that to be remarkable, that a company that big can maintain such a scaled cultural commitment to feel. I know. So if they can do it, I have to wonder why others can't. It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work to close the loop consistently, period, right? But especially across all detractors. But maybe what this means is maybe they don't have that many detractors. I don't know. Right? So if this is one of the organizations that are on the top of your list, Adam. But
Rachel, if you don't have a company, I'm going to let you off the hook. I'm going to suggest one. And although it's not B2B, so I apologize for kind of departing from our theme today, but I become a fan of a group of people who play a version of baseball called Banana Ball. And it's called the Savannah Bananas is the name of the team. And the gentleman's name is Jesse Cole. He wrote this book, I don't know if you could see it on the video, called Fans First. Yeah. It's just a remarkable story about how he took a bunch of ragtag, leftover, semi-pro baseball players and made a phenomenon out of them for their fans, to the point where they've gone from, on a good day, selling 500 tickets to go see them play in some offbeat stadium somewhere, to selling out 90,000 seat football stadiums every place they go play. And if you listen, this guy Jesse is all over the internet. You could see him on YouTube, you could see him on social media. And he always talking about, we want to do what's right for the customer. We don't charge a lot for the seats. We make sure we over service and over deliver on service. We make sure we live up to our promises. And it's all about the experience. There's so little to do with what they actually do on the field, and more about how they make their fans feel to buy a ticket and go to the stadium and watch these guys play this Harlem Globetrotters version of baseball.
Love that.
And it's just so much fun. And they mostly do it because they recognize that as a sport, baseball is in trouble. Young people these days don't follow baseball because it's a long game and a long season and complicated and slow moving. And they like basketball and football instead. So this guy said, let's take some version of the baseball sport that's been around for 150 years and make it attractive to everybody. And I'm just such a fan of what he does. Even if he's perverting my beloved baseball game to no end.
Mark, is this the team where like the pitcher and the batter will get up on stilts and
they do backflips?
I've seen these guys, yeah.
Oh my goodness. I'm gonna have to research this to
there's
see
a circus element. I keep saying they're the Harlem Globetrotters of baseball because they do like stunts and things.
I
like
got you.
It's just so much fun. So I'm voting for the Savannah Bananas as my inspired example over here. Guys, I know we're running long. What I'd just love to ask each of you as we wrap up is, I'm sure people might be listening to the live show. They might be listening to a recording of this. They might be skipping around, but they may want to know, how do I find Adam and Rachel? How do I reach out? I want to talk some more about any of this stuff with you guys. Let's start with you, Rachel. What's the best way for somebody to track you down? Is it LinkedIn? Is it something else? What's the right way to find you?
Yeah, LinkedIn for sure. That is definitely going to be the best way to get a hold of me. Rachel Terlau. I think it's just Rachel Terlau at LinkedIn. Yeah, just feel free to reach out. I always love talking shop. I've enjoyed this conversation with the two of you immensely. Hopefully we can do this again soon. So yeah,
Thank
just
you,
anybody reach out. Would love to chat.
I hope you guys do. And Adam, same deal for you or something different?
Yes, it's just adam.clay@customergauge.com would be the best place to get me. I just want to echo what Rachel said, Mark. Such a pleasure being with you, Rachel. Always so good to see you.
Likewise.
What a
Thank
wonderful
you for being here, guys. I know we're going to wrap up the show now, but I'm going to just, for those of you who've been hanging out with us here for an hour and 6 minutes so far, I want to say a special thank you. This is the holiday time. It's gift giving time. It's showing appreciation and love time. I've given away copies of this book. I'm going to get it in the camera. It's called Information Dashboard Design, written by a gentleman named Stephen Few. And this book is like the ultimate book on how do you visually communicate hard to understand information to other people.
All right.
And this book, I think, is better than every other book I've ever seen or read on this topic. And I'm lucky that I went to Amazon and I bought 20 copies of the book just for this occasion, and I have them in a box over here. So if anybody's listening to this episode still, and we're a little bit over time here, all you need to do is get in touch with either Adam, Rachel, or me and say, send me a copy of the book, and I will make sure you get a copy of this book as our gift.
Wonderful.
It's a terrific book, and it's well worth it, and you can't beat the price. So feel free to reach out to any of the three of us, and we'll make sure that you get a copy of that book right away sent out to you.
Oh, cool.
So guys, have a happy holiday. Thank you for being here. Have a healthy and safe New Year ahead. Good Hanukkah, good Christmas, good everything else that's coming up to the extent you celebrate. And just enjoy the holidays for what they are, and see 2026 as the beginning of new ideas and new beginnings and new things. And hopefully we see a much more exciting, much more positive, much more embraced CX profession in the new year, because we're doing the things we're talking about here.
Hear, hear.
Adam, Rachel, thank you guys. And mostly friends that are still listening in here, thank you guys for being here for this conversation. And I hope you guys all have a wonderful holiday ahead, and we'll see you guys really soon in the new year. Take care, guys, and thank you for everything.
Bye all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Bye, Rachel.